Hollywood in the 1950s lived by simple rules. Glamour attracts, scandal sells, and archetypes work better than complex characters. Onto this stage came Jayne Mansfield, a woman who understood the logic of the industry and pushed it to the limit. She could enter a room as if she directed every flash of every camera. She knew how to make news with her very presence before the headlines were even printed. And behind the dazzling mask stood discipline, stagecraft, and cold calculation. She was called the next Marilyn, but more accurately, she was the editor of her own image. Mansfield didn't just imitate, she exaggerated cliches to the point of parody, and in doing so, she made them her own. That is why images of her remain etched in cultural memory, simple in meaning, instantly readable, and perfectly designed for headlines. Her public appearances resembled comic strip panels, where every gesture was another stroke in the myth. The paradox was striking. The woman the press labeled a dumb bombshell was, in truth, disciplined and serious. With training in drama, music, and languages, she played the dumb blonde with such precision that the image became a tool, not a trap. This fusion of bright visual code and professional skill made her the perfect icon of an era that demanded simple symbols, yet rewarded those who could master attention. But every strategy comes with a price. When the wave of platinum blondes began to fade, studio roles dried up, shifting her work toward nightclubs and low-budget films. In response, Mansfield doubled down on her strongest lever, publicity. Scandalous photos, flamboyant appearances, endless leaks about her private life. All of it kept her profile alive, but at the cost of pushing her further away from serious cinema. The brand that had lifted her to the top became the very ceiling above her. The ending is as famous as it is brutal. A midnight highway, a collision with a truck, children in the back seat who survived. Sensational press reports birthed a grim myth, while the crash itself left a practical legacy. The widespread adoption of under-ride guards on trailers, a rare case where a star's story left its mark not only on iconic images, but also on road safety standards. Today, Mansfield is more than just a figure of the golden age. She is a case study in the making of a media persona, an image designed, amplified through ritual, sustained by constant storytelling, and, when needed, reignited by scandal. Her life was a vivid blueprint of the interplay between art and publicity, where talent plays its part, the audience's attention fuels the arc, and the final edit is left to time. Vera Jane Palmer was born in Pennsylvania in 1933 and faced loss early in life. Her father died when she was just 3. The family moved frequently, and her childhood unfolded between Phillipsburg and Texas. She compensated for this instability with the discipline: violin and piano lessons, dance classes, foreign languages, and school stage productions. Her dream was crystal clear from the start: Hollywood. Not someday, but as soon as possible. At 17, she married and almost immediately became a mother, but ambition never left her. University courses, drama classes, amateur theater groups, she pursued anything that brought her closer to the stage. She sold tickets and popcorn in movie theaters, taught dance, worked as a model, every small job training her most valuable skill: resilience in front of both cameras and audiences. At the same time came the first auditions, the first rejections, and the first lessons in media awareness. One theater mentor was key. Through private lessons, scene breakdowns, and recommendations for screen tests, Jayne began to understand that the industry didn't only respond to talent. It also responded to signals: type, silhouette, color. The suggestion to lighten her look became a career strategy. Platinum blonde hair was the visual code of the era, a shortcut to recognition. It wasn't surrendering to cliché, it was calculation. Enter through the archetype, rise through the roles. Her first tiny appearances on television and in films taught her the economy of a shot. A few lines, one quick walk through the frame, make it memorable. She learned how to build an image out of details: posture, the tilt of a shoulder, a pause before a line. Alongside came the beginnings of media persona building. Snippets in gossip columns, swimsuit photo shoots, spreads in men's magazines, anything that kept her name circulating. Family demands remained heavy. The young couple moved for work and school, adapted to her husband's military service, and shared childcare responsibilities. It was a double shift: homemaker by day, auditions and theater by night. A grueling rhythm that built the endurance she would later need for tours, film sets, and relentless press schedules. Beneath the effortless image, she was sharpening rigid professionalism. By the end of this early stage, Jayne had shaped a clear and connected strategy. Her image was bold and instantly recognizable. Her skills diverse and well-honed. Her network steadily growing through theater circles, photo studios, and magazine contacts. She wasn't drifting into Hollywood on inspiration. She was entering it as a project, with vision, means, and tactics. The next step, turning visibility into a serious role, and the role into stardom. By the mid-1950s, Jayne Mansfield had assembled a rare puzzle for a newcomer: a recognizable type, growing media visibility, and well-trained stage skills. Her first appearances, small parts, and commercials taught her precision: one glance, a gesture, a pause before a line. At the same time, her name began popping up more often in men's magazines and gossip columns, raising the temperature of interest to the point where studios started paying serious attention. The breakthrough came in 1956. The musical satire, "The Girl Can't Help It," struck a perfect nerve of the era. Comic strip aesthetics, rock and roll on screen, and a playful jab at show business cliches. In that context, Mansfield's image was instantly legible. Not just another blonde, but a sign of the times. The box office success sealed it. The studios suddenly had a ready-made media magnet, capable of carrying posters, trailers, and publicity tours. The studio's strategy was clear and blunt. They needed a counterweight to Monroe's unpredictability. A multi-year contract turned Jayne into a system project, while constant marketing comparisons only boosted her name recognition. For Mansfield, this wasn't something to resist. It was an opportunity to play the game better than anyone else. She leaned into the archetype, exaggerating it with self-irony, refining the role of the naive bombshell into a performance delivered with razor-sharp calculation. The next step was to solidify her status. The satirical comedy "Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter?" showcased that her dumb blonde was, in fact, a mask she fully controlled. Beneath it, you could hear her feel for rhythm, timing, and comic pause. A dramatic turn proved her flexibility. In more serious material, Mansfield stripped away the caricature to reveal vulnerability without relying on sex symbolism. The result was professional recognition, a Golden Globe as New Star of the Year, and a reputation as an actress capable of stepping beyond the stereotype. Meanwhile, her international presence grew rapidly. A tour across Europe elevated her from a pinup star into a cultural icon whose red carpet entrance was itself an event. Television specials, magazine covers, and high-paying Las Vegas residencies all strengthened the economy of her name. Her stage earnings rivaled and sometimes surpassed studio salaries. The final touch was her legendary Pink Palace, a house symbol that turned private life into part of the myth, and the myth into an endless performance. By the end of the decade, Mansfield had everything needed to stand as a mid-century pop culture icon. A sharp visual code, a gallery of quotable on-screen moments, international reach, and an unmatched talent for commanding attention. She didn't simply ride the trend, she embodied it, setting the tempo and the rules for how media stardom would work for generations to come. By the end of the 1950s, Jayne Mansfield had turned every public appearance into a carefully staged performance. On the red carpet, dramatic presence. On screen, precise pauses. Behind the curtain, cold calculation. Publicity was no longer a byproduct of fame, but a professional tool. She understood the mechanics of headlines, contrast, provocation, and a repeatable visual code. That's why her images were instantly legible, spreading quickly across newsrooms and magazines. The key was her ability to hold the story between releases. While the studios prepared the next picture, Jayne kept herself in the spotlight. Photo shoots with deliberately exaggerated glamour, daring dresses at premieres, witty one-liners in interviews. Her plan followed a strict cycle: visual shock, media wave, monetization through contracts and stage shows. It was discipline disguised as frivolity. Rivalry became another lever. Comparisons with Marilyn Monroe weren't denied. They were amplified, played up with irony. The second Marilyn, only louder, flashier, sharper. Public encounters, accidental press collisions, teasing hints in interviews, all of it drove ratings. The effect was solidified by that legendary night at Romanoff's beside Sophia Loren. A single calculated appearance created an iconic image and a global news frenzy. Jayne proved a simple truth. In the age of gloss, it's not about who has the best image, but who controls it. Crucially, this game was underpinned by craft. She measured her self-irony carefully, ensuring the image never slipped into caricature. In comedies, she left room for timing and nuance. In interviews, for intelligence and musicality, breaking the sense of a one-dimensional persona. The dumb blonde wasn't a label. It was a role with settings she could adjust. Her media strategy was its own economy. Television appearances fueled demand for nightclub reviews. Reviews raised her fees and studio interest. Studios put her back on the posters. Her iconic home and pink lifestyle completed the myth, turning it into a brand, recognizable, endlessly quoted, easily packaged in any format. The result was that Mansfield became not just an actress, but a system of attention management, where every detail contributed to the grand design. Jayne's personal life always ran parallel with her career, and often raced ahead of it in drama. Her first marriage came early, married at 17, a daughter soon after, and the struggle to balance motherhood with studies and endless auditions. Family tensions, tested by her ambition and growing media attention, ended in divorce. But she kept the Mansfield name. By then, it was already a brand. In 1958 came the union that would become part of her myth, marriage to bodybuilder and Mr. Universe, Mickey Hargitay. The couple looked both cinematic and commercial. Joint stage shows, public appearances, their pink-tinted domestic world, and 3 children, Miklos, Zoltan, and Mariska. Their marriage was powered by rumors and jealousy, but it also generated publicity energy. Magazine covers, interviews, family projects. During this time, Jayne learned how to turn private life into storyline and how to monetize attention, but cracks in the facade grew louder. European film projects, tours, provocative photo shoots, and increasingly risque roles sparked scandals. Jealousy, accusations, and legal battles turned her private life into a soap opera with cliffhangers. The divorce from Hargitay played out under flashing bulbs and screaming headlines, with truth replaced, as always, by sources' emotions and press-friendly half-truth. Her third marriage to director Matt Cimber added intensity but not stability. On paper, it looked like a controlled reset, from chaos to order. In reality, it was a cycle of short reconciliations, creative clashes, constant disputes, and fresh tabloid fodder. A fifth child, a separated household, rumors of destructive affairs outside the marriage, toxic conflicts around her inner circle. It became harder and harder to separate industry news from private scandal. Over time, her personal life fully transformed into format. Interviews became episodes. Premieres felt like season finales. Leaks served as teasers. Jayne had the resilience to withstand the pressure and the talent to use it. But the paradox remained. The very storyline that fueled her popularity also blurred the boundary between life and performance. Her personal brand became its own show, and that show demanded ever more costly sequels. By the early 1960s, the formula of the platinum blonde bombshell had grown tired. The industry was shifting tone. Glossy comic strip heroines were giving way to more grounded characters, new genres, and different ideas of female roles. Studio slates were shrinking, and for an actress tied too closely to one archetype, that meant fewer offers and a step down from major releases to occasional projects, where a single poster pose had been enough yesterday. Today, a broader repertory was required. Mansfield's strategy turned defensive. European shoots, co-productions, low-budget features, these kept her visible on screen, but no longer secured her star standing. The real economy of her name shifted to live performance, Las Vegas residencies, touring reviews, and nightclubs. These stages still brought money and crowds, but within the career hierarchy, they were seen only as a holding place. The press read the signal clearly. The film star had become the stage attraction. The turning point came with a bold move on screen. Scandal drew box office sales, bands created lines at theaters, and her name once again filled the headlines. But the compromise was impossible to ignore. Attention was fueled more by shock than by roles. Each provocation generated a flash of excitement, but also locked her further into a new typecast, less an actress of the big screen, more the heroine of an endless media show. Her private life only amplified the turbulence. Divorces, conflicts, toxic relationships, exhausting legal battles, all of it became part of the same running storyline, impossible to separate from the professional narrative. Publicity, once her sharpest tool, now worked more like background noise. Attention was still high, but harder and harder to convert into serious scripts and leading parts. By the middle of the decade, the trajectory was clear. Hollywood had moved on, while Jayne kept fighting for her place in the spotlight by every means left available. She maintained her discipline, her stamina, her stage polish, but the market climate and her locked-in image reduced her efforts to small, local victories. Her fall from Olympus was not a sudden crash, but a long, exhausting staircase downward. with the flash of cameras following her at every step. The night of June 28th to 29th, 1967 began as just another working trip. After a late show in Biloxi, Jayne Mansfield set out for New Orleans, where a midday TV appearance awaited her. In the car with her were the driver, her companion, and her 3 children, settled into the back seat. The route followed a stretch of US 90, where the pre-dawn mist often blurred the highway into a flat, gray sheet with no depth. The car cruised at highway speed, the only light coming from the scattered glow of the road ahead. Around 2:30 a.m., the visibility collapsed. On the road ahead, a tractor-trailer moved slowly while another truck sprayed a thick fog of insecticide. Mansfield's Buick Lex under the rear of the trailer. The impact struck above the hood line into the windshield and roof. The 3 adults in the front seat were killed instantly. In the back, the children miraculously survived, shaken but alive. The cruelest contrast of that night. Almost immediately, a myth was born. In photos from the crash site, strands of blonde hair were spotted. Early reports repeated, often with lurid detail, that Mansfield had been decapitated. Doctors and police later denied it. The official cause was massive head trauma with a scalping injury. The supposed hair on the wreckage was only her wig, torn loose in the collision. But a grim story told once can outlive the corrections, especially when it fits the audience's darkest imagination. The practical consequences were as lasting as the headlines. Investigators highlighted the deadly risk of high-clearance trailers and the tendency of cars to slide underneath them. Soon after, trailers across the country began adopting rear underride guards, steel bars designed to block smaller vehicles from going beneath. In everyday speech they became known as the Mansfield Bar, a rare case where a star's memory was etched not only in film history, but in safety design. Her funeral passed quietly compared to the scale of her former fame. The news still quarreled over details. Tabloids fed on rumors, and the glossy pink myth suddenly collided with the cold mechanics of highways and accident reports. The last image of her story, the twisted wreck, the empty strip of night road and a dark sky overhead, became the kind of stark ending no screenwriter invents. It simply arrives when an era decides to place a full stop. Jayne Mansfield's legacy is twofold: cultural and practical. On screen, she left iconic roles and visual codes of the 1950s. In reality, she influenced road safety itself. Her name remains in language both as the pink code of glamour and as the everyday term for the underride guard on trailers. The Sariskar Mansfield Bar, a rare case where the myth of a star became a piece of engineering designed to save lives. In culture, her carefully constructed persona still echoes across formats. The satirical films about show business, the famous side-eye photo with Sophia Loren, the Pink Palace as domestic performance, all of it is endlessly quoted in music videos, photo shoots, and fashion spreads. For today's pop figures, she remains a handbook of self-promotion, how to engineer an image, how to hold attention between releases, and how to turn private life into narrative without losing professional rhythm. Her personal legacy continued within her own family. The career of Mariska Hargitay followed a different path: resilience, a long-lasting role, a steady distance from scandal, while maintaining respect for her mother's memory. It wasn't a break from the past, but an adaptation, the same discipline and mastery of attention, translated into the television format of long-running series and loyal audiences. And yet, the most paradoxical memory is the practical one born from tragedy. The history of cars underriding trailers became the strongest argument for mandatory rear safety guards. The term stuck not because everything began with a single crash, but because her death forced the issue into public view. In this way, the very media energy Mansfield wielded in life helped push attention toward a technical detail after her death. The conclusion is simple and precise. Jayne Mansfield remains both a symbol of a dazzling, ruthless era and an example of how a public biography can shape safety standards and industry habits. Her image continues to live on in cultural references, in media textbooks, in museum exhibitions, and the Mansfield Bar stands as a reminder that even the brightest myth can leave behind something earthly and useful to all. Hollywood has always loved simple masks and complicated fates. Jayne Mansfield accepted those rules and played them brilliantly, pushing the archetype to the point of parody, turning a cliché into her own instrument. But every instrument has its limits. When the trend shifts, it begins to dictate its own terms. The Mansfield brand that once gave her a meteoric rise became, over time, a cage, shutting her away from roles where depth mattered more than spectacle. The price of that brand was the constant need to be an event. Publicity brought money, but it demanded fuel, sharp quotes, provocations, premieres of real life. While cameras admired her boldness, the industry grew weary of her type. Mansfield kept her discipline, stayed in shape, worked tirelessly, but the news cycle devoured every nuance, leaving only the headline. The media machine that once served her art gradually became its own show, serving goals not always her own. And yet, this is not a biography of defeat. It is a story of influence, of how an actress dismantled myths and reassembled them into the language of pop culture, the instantly recognizable silhouette, the pink code of her lifestyle, the self-irony, the ability to hold attention between releases. Her presence lived on through film stills, the legendary Pink Palace, and within her family, a different trajectory of fame, quieter and longer, but echoing the same discipline she carried. The paradox of her ending was its practicality. A tragic crash put the debate over road safety into the national spotlight and cemented rear underride guards on trailers. A cultural myth left behind a piece of engineering that silently saves lives every day. It is a rare and almost incompatible pairing. The legend of a star and the dry claws of a safety regulation. Yet it is this pairing that makes her legacy tangible. In memory, Mansfield remains a concise lesson of her era. Image is capital, but capital requires both strategy and an expiration date. She mastered the art of creating attention and turning it into a career better than most. And perhaps the truest definition of her life is not a victim of glamour, but the architect of a myth. A myth so convincing, it eventually trapped even its creator. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss the next incredible stories. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.